Okay. Okay. Yeah. So somehow it's happening. Somehow it's happening. Are we recording? Yes, we are. Excellent.
I see a recording symbol. Yeah. So
brilliant. Well, I've given myself permission to record. So guys, so assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Nice to welcome you to this class.
Wa barakatuh.
wa alaikum salam.
Nice to have both of you on board today, and so what I want to do is somehow, just maybe take advantage to jump right into today's subject matter. Well, we have a class from last month, as always, which, given a couple of delays, was really only what was it? 2 weeks ago, actually? No, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a short month, so to speak. There was a little bit of a homework, let's say, a team exercise to discuss whether we feel whether the Zaydi madhab as such, or the legal structure which we're calling as a Zaydi madhab, which clearly has some subsects, as we've recently discovered through the conversations in our group, whether we have enough, let's say, sufficient degrees of freedom to express ourselves in Islam, but also do we have, let's say, more or less or the same degrees of freedom as maybe some other madhahib or legal schools of thought in Islam. So that would be the homework to discuss today. And then afterwards, today we're going to do two principles in one class because they're very much related to each other. Okay. Two principles of Imam Razvi, which are, the fourth principle would be Islam being inclusion and tolerance. And we'll get into what that means. Maybe just a quick aside on that note, you can never build an empire without tolerance. It's not possible.
Definitely.
It's not possible.
Definitely.
If you look at the Romans, if you look at the Safavids, the Ottomans, the old Chinese empires, really, if you look at any empire that's, built and stood to last a long time, Islam in its golden age, even now the United States compared to other countries, at least within its own borders, if not externally. But you cannot create any kind of great empire without the principles of inclusion and tolerance, because you're going to conquer other people. And if you're not tolerant of them, they're going to rebel. So you cannot at the same time, and this has been proven time and time again in history, you cannot have an expansive mentality and be intolerant. You can be intolerant and have a secluded mentality. That will work until it doesn't work anymore. Until there's no more of you, because you're not marrying, you're not intermarrying, you're not mixing culture, you're not diversifying the population. So at some point you're going to go under. You can have inclusiveness without expansiveness. So that means if I'm an individual of one person, I can be very inclusive, but I cannot exceed my own border of one. Yeah, that's also possible. But you cannot have intolerance and expansiveness. It's not going to work, okay? So that's a message to the less tolerant brothers in Islam that have an expansive mentality. It's not going to work, okay? This is not a message for you guys, because I know that you know, or let's say that I expect that you know. And the second principle is Islam is interreligious dialogue, and we'll get into that as well, and it's very much related to the first principle of today, okay? But maybe we can start with, with your set of homework. So tell me, gentlemen, where are you? Did you have a chance to discuss? Did you look into it? Do you have any feedback for me? I saw the post from Muhammad about Rashid's madhab comparison. I thought that was quite nice.
And that was a quick homework for me.
Copy paste the post. Sometimes it's like that, you can't.
So sometimes you have to find, okay, what have I read before? Right? Oh yeah, I heard about this. Okay, it's relevant. Why not?
That sounds good. That's good to know. Yeah. Good to know. But I had actually seen that post a while ago, and I thought it was very good. I think that's the way.
I mean,
go ahead.
It actually helped me to actually grasp the difference between all this while with, for the Muslims in Southeast Asia, predominantly Ash'aris, although they will always claim that, we are Sunnis, Ash'aris and Maturidis, but like after I read Rashid's sharing, and I'm like, No. The Sunnis here in Malaysia and Singapore, they don't really understand the difference between Ash'aris and Maturidis,
Right.
especially when it comes to the concept of qadar and free will. They don't.
Right.
They don't.
Right.
So amongst the things that I had previously discussed with Rashid personally one-to-one is on the concept that every speaker, in fact, here in Malaysia, Singapore especially, there's a certain practice whereby they would end their speech with, well, that's all that I have to say for today. If it is true, it is from Allah. If there's any mistake, it is from my own shortcoming.
Right.
So in a way, it's a bit it's almost Jabari. See, attributing everything to Allah except for mistakes.
Right. Of course.
Then that also leads, especially for the Malay Muslims here, it leads to the idea that it's okay, all these are already decreed by Allah. Don't fret too much about it, and that kind of thing.
Right.
Which is technically is true. Yeah, it is decreed by Allah, but so at times it went to the extent of they're not gonna do some retrospection or some reflection even. Okay, where did we go wrong? What could we have done better? So it's always it's okay, it's a degree of Allah. Let's just move on. No, it shouldn't be that way. So and sometimes I'm like, for me personally, I feel disturbed with that notion because technically God gave you the free will to decide what to do. And you need to be accountable for the decisions or the indecisions that you did.
Yes, absolutely.
Not just tai chi to Allah. Oh, it's okay. It's disagree. That's not exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's my that would be my takeaway. I mean, my sharing for today.
Right. Yeah, very highly appreciated, Mohammed. So I do find it interesting that this particular subject, again, it was about the degrees of freedom and between the different schools of Islam, and obviously freedom is very much associated with free will. So you cannot have freedom of expression without having a free will in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So they're very interrelated. So the subject of qadr, is obviously very symbolically related to this discussion of freedom at all versus freedom within a school of thought or within a religion or a worldview, if you will. Yeah. So if you don't have the freedom anyway, that doesn't matter. Yeah. Anyway, it's Allah's will that you're Zaydi and you think that you have free will. Yeah. Or it's Allah's will that you don't think you have free will, or it's your freedom and you still don't think you have free will. Okay. So those are the combinations that can happen.
Yeah.
Or it is Allah's will and you don't have any free will. So those are the four combinations that can happen. Yeah. So this has been very interesting. Let's say kickoff to the discussion. And what about you, Logan? I know you're very immersed nowadays in the doctoral thesis. So
yeah, I wasn't able to do the homework, but I could at least weigh in. Maybe
sure.
on the spot. Let me think. And I'm just kind of free verse here, I guess in a way, like,
it's free will, right?
Yeah.
It's freedom. It's about freedom. So
it's all improv right now.
Prepared.
Yeah. I think that it seems that the Zaydi madhab, it has it seems like there's a lot of freedom in terms of community, right? That that hypothetically, if a community finds this, and I'm also obviously speaking at this point, we're only a few classes into Zaydism, so my knowledge is limited, but based on what I understand, if a community finds like a Seyyed and who's righteous, they can declare that person as their imam, right? And then that gives their community a certain amount of freedom to what's the word I'm looking for? It gives them a certain develop, and it gives them a certain amount of autonomy, right? To they have a physical guide to help them to adapt the law to their situation, their own particular situation and whatnot. So I think there's freedom there. I think within Sunni thought, generally Sunni legal schools, I mean, it depends on how you take it. I guess it depends on how someone approaches it, like how much they want to refer to taqlid and things like that,
Oh, okay.
But I
Well,
think
that's a very interesting discussion, because that's another complete way of exercising your freedom, is to give up your freedom, right?
right,
To a
yeah,
degree,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But this obviously, differs, between Sunni thinkers, so like for example, the locally we have Khalid Abu Fadl, who's a Egyptian.
It's mashallah. It's
yeah,
just mashallah.
yeah, he's I mean, he's here in LA, and I mean, and obviously, he doesn't
It's
subscribe.
simply mashallah.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and quite frankly, he doesn't ascribe to the principles of taqlid really, and he's very comfortable to rethink, and so in a way, and then
Is he Shia, or is he? I don't know this gentleman. Is he Shia
no,
or
He's
Shia, or what is he?
Sunni. He's Sunni. He's
he's Maliki, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
Like
he's
Shafi.
Shafi. He's
He's
Shafi.
Shafi.
Shafi. Yeah,
So,
Shafi. Yeah.
that's interesting, because
Yeah.
he would seem the antithesis of what most Shafi'is would be.
Oh yeah, but he's also a reformer. Yeah, he's like, he's
Right.
also a kind
Because
of.
I've always had this perception that he's more inclined to Maliki rather than Shafi'i.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's my perception.
I mean, he identifies as a Shafi, but I think at his level, he's probably takes from a lot of
Probably
scholars, right? So, but he's very much like of the school of adapting Islam to cultural,
yeah.
to that urf, decide, kind of changes a lot of things, right? What is
right.
It's very nice that you mentioned urf, because one of the things that I want to get into later, but maybe I start that a bit earlier now that you brought it up, are actually the 16 criteria of legal judgments that Imam Razvi taught within the context of Zaydiyya. And urf is definitely one of the concepts. It's not at the very top, but it is quite high in the ranking.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a very interesting, let's say, starting point for discussion. How much does culture itself, or let's say customs and local environment, influence the concept of freedom itself, right? So that's another discussion. What is freedom?
To put it that way, urf is actually a consideration of freedom in how a community interprets and implements religion, right? I mean, if you can say so.
Yeah, that's
but
a good
interestingly, in the Sunni school, the Sunni Hadithi school, as in the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis, urf is almost rarely being taken into consideration.
Okay.
Most if the Mufti were to adopt the concept of urf, it's either a rare situation, because there's no way for them to implement that fatwa unless they take the urf into consideration. Because generally, the trend that we're seeing here in Indonesia is still good, but the trend that we're seeing in Malaysia and Singapore is that they are becoming quite staunchly or rigid Shafi'is, whereby urf is almost out of the question. Compared to the past in the 70s, whereby the scholars back then weren't very particular about how a Muslimah's hijab should be. Just adopt whatever the urf is, and that's good enough. But nowadays, probably the influence of Salafism, everyone is dictating how the hijab should be. Like, okay, that's weird. And it doesn't help that because one of my assignments when I was doing my diploma in Sharia was comparative faith, and one of the books that we were referring to was that of I forgot the title. It's by Dr. Wahba Az-Zuhaili, comparing the four schools of Sunni. And he actually mentioned in the preface, whereby in the Shafi'i school, as stated by Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar, I can't remember whether it's Al-Asqalani or Al-Haythami, whereby Ibn Hajar says that taqlid in the Shafi'i school is highly frowned upon. No one should make taqlid unless really, really, really necessary. And that is actually, to me, can be quite problematic, especially in matters of daily living, muamalat, a lot of Shafi'i views are just
Right.
you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Very interesting because the subject of taqlid is, I mean, I was just speaking to a Persian Shia lady who was telling me that the Marja Sistani, who's based in Najaf in Iraq, who just met the Pope on the weekend. So
Oh yeah, yes,
yesterday that the Pope Francis was in Iraq and shaking the hands of Ayatollah Sistani or Marja Sistani. And she was saying, I take my taqlid from Sistani. So in other words, there's some kind of, chain of scholars, and the Sistani is giving it to one level and he's giving to another level. And then somehow it kind of disseminates into the population. And then the freedom that the Ithna Ashari, have, the 12er Shia, is to choose which of the Ayatollahs or Marjas do they take taqlid from, right? In other words, to who do they go in the issues of mu'amalat and akhlaq and all that stuff. So so it's certainly very interesting, let's say, exercise of freedom. I choose to give up my freedom to this person because I believe that person is on the right path. So I'll follow that person. So if they don't know, they just go to that way because they don't know. So they just imitate in that sense. And that's their way of exercising freedom, so to speak.
Okay.
And it can be for different reasons. Okay, I like his viewpoint on this and that. I agree with him with that. So I just go there. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what they do. And by the way, that's also to whom they pay their 20%, right? Because you know that the Shia taxes are not just the zakat and the sadaqah, but they also pay the 20% on top of it. So at least the very, very pious Shia are paying a lot to there's a lot of funds. This is not only just a question of looking at yourself in the mirror and being a good Muslim and feeling good when you go to bed. No, this is a very financial subject.
I mean, now that you mention it, no wonder the local Shia communities are quite self-sustainable. Interesting. Right. You ask the local Sunnis to do that, they were like, no way. No way.
That gives a certain independence from the state, right? Because if you're basically collecting the money from within the community, then whatever happens on the nation level or the state level or the kind of political arena, but the religious community is always in that sense protected against that because the funds are there, the money is there, right? So
true. And for Singapore, generally, because they don't, Singapore generally doesn't, the religious authority in general doesn't recognize the local Shia community.
Right.
Except for the Ismaili community.
Right.
Because the Ismaili community has been here.
Why?
Partly, and because they have been around since the time the British came here.
Okay.
So the pioneers or the early generations of the Ismailis, the Dawoodi Bokhros, they were responsible in helping to build Singapore back then. So they were recognized. But I was like, you can recognize the Ismaili community, but not the Ja'fari community. Interesting.
How about
so only this Zaydis are non-existent here.
There's one. I think we have one.
So it became interesting because when I met up with our legal partner about 2 weeks back, so the lawyer was sharing with us that for the Shia community, when it comes to Faraid and estate distribution matters, they cannot go to the Sharia court because the Sharia court doesn't recognize them.
Really?
So they have to find other means. So like, interesting. Now, can I, as a Zaydi, create a niche in the area?
But it's interesting because we had the exact same subject here in Germany when we were building the community, so to speak, because in fact, in general, Islam is not recognized on a state level as let's say, as a religion, as a religious authority with the right to collect funds. So of course, Islam is, recognized as a religion, just as any religion is recognized as a religion, but the state does not authorize, let's say, institutions or groups or unions to kind of collect zakat, for example, and then distribute the zakat, or to collect sadaqah and then distribute the sadaqah. So everything is done kind of on a free freewheeling basis, and it's done completely independently of the state, right? So again, it's a give and take, because in that sense, you know, you don't have the support of the state, but on the other hand, then you're completely independent of the state, right? So as long as the state does not somehow crack down on you, essentially you're independent and you do what you want, you pay what you want, you get back what you want, you distribute the way you want, and there's no, let's say, intangible about how to distribute the money or something. It's just everyone can do it the way that they want, right? So
nice. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
So that's just the state structure, or that's the relationship that we have here in Germany.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. How about over there in LA?
In terms of,
I mean, in terms of what we were just talking about was how, like in the Ithna Ashari system of paying back the khums, you know, they pay the 20% back to their ayatollah or their marja that they're following, and so of course they, you know, it's not only a question of freedom and, you know, Islam and being a good boy or girl, but it's really financially a very important flow of money that's going to the ayatollahs and the marjas, and it gives them a certain independence of the political arena.
I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. My son's calling me. I'll be right back.
Sure.
But anyway, so that's a super interesting topic. Tell me about Singapore. Do you have like basic? I guess you have basic freedom of religion, right? So anybody can practice what they want, right?
Oh, I mean, theoretically yes. Yet ironically, is the local religious council doesn't recognize Ja'faris. We have a small yet sizable Ahmadi community.
Okay, right.
Totally not recognized at all. So yeah, when it comes to estate matters, yeah, they have issues as well. So I was like discussing with the lawyer, probably it's one area that I can get myself a niche in.
Okay. Got it.
But I have to be prepared for some backlash from the mainstream community then.
Right.
Farhan is liberal, he's Mu'tazili, he's Farhan is basically every label that we can throw to him at.
Pretty funny. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
But ironically, like, I mean, which is relevant to today's class, because it's about, ironically, Islam is supposed to be all inclusive.
Right.
Even during the time of the Prophet, the companions, they have their own varying opinions.
Sure.
The Prophet didn't exactly say one is right, the other is wrong.
Right.
He recognized them. But that kind of diversity, I think nowadays people struggle to embrace with. Probably a lack of knowledge or ignorance. Wallahu a'lam.
Wallahu a'lam. I mean, this is one of the hadith is that, and I couldn't quote you exactly from where, but one of the hadith is that differences of opinion are a blessing among the Umayyad, so to speak. Yeah. So is it Muslim? Okay. Yeah. So this is you know, quite well-known hadith, and you can say that you know, that this has been a hadith that's been kind of forgotten sometimes over the thousands of generations or thousands of years, you know, swept under the rug conveniently when certain leaders did not like it or did not agree with it, or wanted to impose a certain way of thinking or dialectic upon their community because it simply made it easier for them to manage the population, or for whatever reason they may have had to do so. But certainly that is one thing, is that freedom is always revolutionary because you can't control it, right? So if you grant freedom, it means you cannot contain it, right? If you cannot contain it, you know, then basically you run the risk of losing it every time. And that is exactly what Imam Razvi used to preach. He would say, if somebody wants to leave the community, they should leave. Just let them leave. There should not be a punishment on this, because we don't want people here who don't want to be here. It's the worst. This is how you develop munafiq, you know, by forcing people to be there who don't want to be there.
True. Okay.
So the right way is to let them go with grace, show them the door, and tell them they can come back if they change their mind, you know.
Agreeable.
but if you force them to stay, they will stay with their body, but they will not stay with their heart and not with their mind. So you've created, essentially, you've created them, the group of munafiq, you know? And this is what happens on a regular basis, right? I mean, even if you were to grant a strict freedom of religion, let people come in, let people go back, and so on, you'd always be faced with the phenomenon of nifaq, you know, because it's just a reality of the human being. But you greatly increase the potential for nifaq when you limit freedom of religion and freedom of expression. Number one, because you define in a more limited way what Islam actually is, right? And impose that onto your population. So you automatically create the resistance, if you will, right? In a way, you're like in a laboratory, you're kind of creating the resistant antibodies to the virus, okay? Now that we're talking about virus every day. So in that sense, you're creating, you know, this kind of antivirus, right, to your own virus, by limiting the definition of what Islam is or is not. And on the other hand, of course, you're also creating the nifaq itself, because people cannot express themselves openly, so they express themselves in secret, if necessary, in their hearts, right? So one easy way to deal with nifaq as it relates to our community is simply to allow freedom of expression and religion in its maximal capacity, right? Because then people would come out and say, well, this is not Islam for me. I don't think that I have to wear a hijab in a certain way. I can also wear it in a different way. I don't know, yeah? For example. Or, yeah, it's a sunnah to wear a beard, but I don't necessarily have to, so today I'm gonna shave, right? Like Brother Muhammad, I like his look more than mine, so I'm gonna shave, right? So, I mean, or the opposite. I like Logan's look, so I'm gonna let it grow. So either way, you know, it's a direction that you take when you open up freedom of expression. What will happen? You reduce the resistance, right? Paradoxically, more people will be interested in Islam because they will find themselves being able to give expression to their inner desires,
soul,
and soul, exactly, which essentially is an expression, desire of their expression of the soul in that particular moment. And therefore they will, you know, stick around, or they will simply join, yeah? But if you narrow the definition and narrow, then unless the person is right there, right in that sweet spot, they're not going to join, you know?
Yeah.
Given the choice, they leave. Not given the choice, they create the resistance within. And then you have the problem of nifaq, right? So one of the most effective ways of dealing with nifaq on a let's say grander level or more conceptual level is simply to allow freedom of religion and expression, okay? And paradoxically, you will increase the community and increase the strength by doing so. And this is something that is not only true in Islam, it's true in a marriage, okay? It's true in your relationship with your children. It's true in your relationship with yourself. It's true in your relationship with your family, at work, with your neighbors. If you act from a place of freedom, automatically resistance will fall. And more people will be willing and happy and able to collaborate with you. Yeah? Whereas you'll always find the people who are, you know, kind of, if you look at this kind of, you'll find this kind of stereotypical character of the bitter, lonely recluse, yeah? Somehow hiding out on his mountain. And as long as no one talks to him, he's perfectly satisfied because he's quite sure he's found the solution. But the moment that someone comes and even just says hello, hello becomes a challenge, yeah? Just to say hello. just to say Salamu alaikum. Okay, you didn't say it the right way. So I won't give you alaikum salam back. Yeah. Okay, so automatically, you see this character of the bitter recluse who couldn't give themselves the freedom of expression and therefore couldn't give it to anyone else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very true on interpersonal relationship. It's very true on relationship with ourselves in terms of how much freedom and tolerance am I going to grant myself to expand. And it's certainly true within any religious community or any group dynamic at all between people. And therefore, it's certainly also true in Islam. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can observe this pattern and you can think about strategically, if you want to create Islamic Tawheed, and if you want to develop the ground, if you're Shia, you want to develop the ground for Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. If you are, many Sunnis also want to do the same. Well, if you want to prepare the ground, does it make more sense to have a very rigid and limiting concept of Islam, or does it make sense to expand and give freedom and broaden the borders as much as possible so that when Imam Mahdi comes, alayhi salam, inshallah, then he'll find the most fruitful earth on which to plant his seed of retribution, if you will. So this is simply a strategic question at the end of the day. It's not even a question of aqidah, or it's not even a question of fiqh. It's the aql, I mean, what are we doing,
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing when we try to limit other people's freedom of expression? We're only limiting our capacity of inclusiveness and thereby expansiveness. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this will always come back to haunt us at some point. And if it takes 500 years for a cycle, it's 500 years, but it will come back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always, you can always see on the downscale of any empire, you can look at it now. I'm sorry to say this, Logan, you can see it with the United States, with the last guy that you had in for 4 years. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, anytime that an empire starts to decline, you can see the tolerance, start to decline. You can see the rigidity start to increase, the narrow-mindedness start to limit people's expression. And so the contraction begins. And the expansion is always exactly the opposite. Expansion always means expansion of freedom. It's chemistry, okay? It's nothing more than chemistry. You can see it on the molecular level. If I add energy, if I add warmth, I create entropy.
Mm-hmm. Entropy
means, and the warmth and the energy mean that the boundaries of a system will be pushed and expanded, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If I take away the energy, in other words, if I decrease the warmth, or if I send the warmth in another direction, then the entropy reduces. So therefore, the system starts to shrink and become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it becomes close to nothing, right? So the way to create, even just on a chemical or biochemical level, or thermodynamic level, to create expansiveness is to add energy and to allow for entropy. In other words, to allow for system borders to be pushed by molecules moving in all kinds of different directions in ways that cannot be controlled, because again, the principle of entropy is chaos. It cannot be controlled, right?
Right.
So if we apply the same, first of all, to our own religious practice, and then from that point to our personal environment, and then from that point to a more broader understanding of geopolitics, then certainly the place that you want to be on the curve is, somehow the expanding part of the curve. You don't want to get caught in the contracting part of the curve, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the way to do it is to give freedom and to give expression and to deal with the risk that comes. It doesn't mean that there's no risk. There is risk, but you deal with the risk that comes and you manage it when it's out and when it's on the table. So this is, let's call this an extension of the argumentation that Imam Razvi would use when he would list the reasons why freedom of religion and worldview is very, very essential to Islam and to the concept of expansion in Islam. In fact, you're not doing anything more than following a thermodynamic principle, which is that warmth creates entropy and entropy creates expansion. So that's an insight into kind of systematic freedom, if you will. And if I look at what else we talked about, and I'm just going to have a look at the time. It's 5 minutes to 3. Logan, I think you usually finish up at 3 o'clock, right?
Yeah, I do. I could probably give you 10 more minutes, but then I have to go pray Fajr before it's out, and then wake up my wife because she goes for a walk with her friend around this time. So,
fantastic. So let's focus in. So that's that's now we've talked about freedom, and we've kind of closed a large part of the discussion from last month's class. But
I could probably give you 15 more minutes, to be honest. Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead. It's certainly an interesting subject. So be nice to have you. But it also builds a nice bridge to today's principles, which are Islam is inclusion and tolerance, right? We just talked about that. You can't have inclusion and tolerance without having the basic freedom to be inclusive, right? And you certainly can't be tolerant without inclusiveness. And then again, the fifth principle of Imam Razvi being Islam is interreligious dialogue. So in other words, we're not just creating the freedom to expand. We're not just providing a system dynamic which allows for inclusion and tolerance. We're actually reaching out to the other parties, and we're trying to form interchemical molecular bonds with elements that may not be of our own nature, but with whom, if once compounded into some kind of a molecule, can create a greater substance than each element on its own, like water, okay? Can you have water without hydrogen? No. Can you have water without oxygen? No. But it's the right combination of water and oxygen that creates the molecule, right? And you'll see this, again, it's just biochemistry. You'll see this everywhere on the planet. This law takes place. Through dialogue, you create bonds and interchanges and interactions. And again, it's not just the thought process, but it's also, for example, intermarriage, okay? Intermarriage, communities working together in a certain way build a nation. If a nation is divided by communities and the communities don't get along, then they're much more busy with their internal strife than they are with any kind of expansive policy, yeah? Again, every time it's the same story in history, yeah? So interreligious dialogue does the opposite. It creates bridges, and by creating these bridges, creates a platform for a larger contribution to society to occur than if each element had simply been left to their own devices and left to their own. Yeah, it's not a question of dilution, because the other thing is, yeah, but if we have a dialogue, we'll dilute our own principles. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because the principles of Islam are extremely clear. I mean, they're not clear anywhere else than Islam, yeah? God is one, okay? Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the last prophet, okay? So, okay, you can debate that also. But at the end of the day, that's the majority of the consensus of the opinion of the Muslims. So therefore, at the present moment, it's Islam, okay? So from our point of view, we should be the first to be relaxed. You know, basically we should sit at our banquet of 5-star meals and dishes, and we should let anybody who wants to come and take from the banquet just come and take anything. Just take. Just take what you want and give what you want. Bring what you want. I'll smile. I'll say thank you. I'll take the gift. Yeah. I'll put it to the side. If I want to eat it, I'll eat it later when you're not there. Because if I eat it when you're there, you might think, now I'm one of you. No, I didn't say I was one of you. But I accept the gift. I say thank you. If you're there and I don't eat it, then it's impolite. So I don't want to reject you. Okay, the guest is coming through the door, but you know, give the gift to the dog or to the cat. No, also we don't say that. Yeah. So we have the banquet, we have the table, we have all the fruits, the vegetables, the meals, the dessert, the drinks, the alcohol-free drinks. Yeah. So we have no shame. Yeah. We have no shame. We have no reason to hide all of the gifts. And so we should be the first to accept and actually promote this dialogue. And of course, you know, there will be different reactions to that. Not everybody that you send the invitation is going to come to the banquet. Not everyone that you have at the banquet is going to behave properly. You know, so you still have management issues to deal with. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this is the correct policy for a self-contained, secure, confident, rich, wealthy ummah of Islam. And we know the hadith, which is that the test or the proof of Islam shall be wealth. Okay, I don't know if you gentlemen are aware of the hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, I couldn't quote it. You can find it if you look for it. But wealth is our test. So you've always seen wealth in Islam, yeah. Whether it was the Prophet Muhammad and the 4 Khalifun al-Rashidin, or whether it was the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties, or later the Andalusian southern Spain, or whether it was the Safavids or the Ottomans, the Fatimids, you know, all the Mughal empires, you know, all the traders in Southeast Asia, and even today, of all people, the least educated and most belligerent tribes of Central Arabia found oil. Okay, so wealth is our furqan, you know, it's our criterion. Yeah, will we pass the test? You know, we will see if we pass the test, but the wealth is there. So if we have the wealth, we should not be ashamed to distribute the wealth and give it to those who need it. So we should be the first, you know, in line for interreligious dialogue. We should be the first to support it. And I took a couple of quotes from the Quran, as I always do, simply for the sake of, again, for starting a debate, not for ending a debate. So any of these, anyone can, of course, dispute how to use a verse of the Quran and all of that. But the point is that we in this class, and we as Zaydi, following Imam Razvi, we don't ignore the Quran either, but we base everything that we do coming from the Quran and from the aql and from the hadith. And so it's no different in that sense from any other madhab, except that we have a higher priority on the aql, you can say. And we've talked about that substantially in previous classes. So I'll just maybe quote these last 2 Quranic verses. Inna alladhina amanu walladhina hadu wa nasra wa sabiina min amana billahi wal yawm al-akhiri wa amil salihana falahum ajrahum inda rabbihim. ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Okay. صدق الله العظيم. So truly the believers and the Jews and the Christians and Sabians, those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the last day and perform righteous deeds will have their reward with their Lord and shall neither fear nor grieve. Okay, that sounds like inclusion to me. I wouldn't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
It's Baqarah 62. All right. And again, please research it. Please, criticize it. I mean, let's make that the homework. What are the ayat that we can find in the Quran to support the principles of inclusion, tolerance, and interreligious dialogue? Let's make that the homework, gentlemen. Okay. And Quran and Hadith, if you find them, yeah.
Okay.
And the ayat of
Sure.
That's great. Let that be our team exercise. And please, guys, if you find time, exchange with each other, with Rashid, with Yudhishthira, anybody who wants to join in. Sometimes these guys can make it, sometimes they can. It's no problem. People are free to come and go as they please. So, of course, based on the expansive principle, right? So the last ayat I have, and let me close with that. وَمِنْهُمْ الَّذِي يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أَنْ قُلْ أُذُهُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ يَوْمٍ بِاللَّهِ وَيَوْمٍ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ رسول الله لهم عذاب أليم. Okay, صدق الله العظيم. So you can find, even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you can find Sahaba themselves who are speaking ill of the Prophet ﷺ by saying he listens to everyone. Tell them he listens for your own good and he trusts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he trusts the faithful, the mu'mineen, and he is a blessing for those who believe. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. For those who offend the apostle of Allah, there is a painful punishment. And it's Surah Tawbah, ayat 61. Okay. So let's end with those two ayats. Are there any questions or final comments before we close today?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. So the next class will be the first week of April, the first Sunday of April. And look very much forward to seeing you there, inshallah. Have a wonderful month, and let's
I was actually going to request, since it seems like it's just us most of the sessions, would you guys mind doing the second week of April? Because my exam is my exam is the week after that first Sunday. So
okay, no, that won't be a problem at all. No, that won't be a problem at all.
No problem for me though.
Okay, great. That'd be great. Then I'll be able to join carefree,
Yeah, definitely. It's better if you come carefree.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Good luck with your exam in any case, inshallah. So
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
We wish you the best, and inshallah you'll do a great job. And Muhammad, great to see you. Logan, great to see you. Let's be in touch, inshallah, for next month.
Inshallah. Sounds good. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.